Alright, I'm gonna be going over the guidelines. Tank controllers. Here we have our little tank. We have the moves forward, spins, rotates. He doesn't move backwards. I think he kind of glides at the end a little. That was built in. So that's my tank controllers. The code is right here. It's all this. Here's he moves forward. It adds a counter force, so when he's moving forward, it stops him. So it's kind of natural, I guess. It slows the player down after he stopped pressing it. I added the stop rate, which is what kind of makes him glide. The higher it is, the faster he stops, and then that's what rotates the player. Game manager singleton. Here we have the game manager with all of its components, and here's the game manager. There's only one. Here's what keeps it unique, so there's only one, I guess, and so it doesn't destroy at the end of the level. Here's all the code for it. Let's see. Game manager controls game object live spawns and game over. Alright, so for the live spawns, so I have a function for when the player dies, it's labeled right here, for when he respawns, and then this controls the lives, keeps track. So once he respawns, it removes a life, and this is before it even like respawns him. It removes a life, and then it checks to see if he's got any more lives, and if he does, then it respawns him and it sets everything back to regular. It updates everything. The marker text is what makes it the game over or the revive or you won screen or whatever, and then there's what updates the actual live display on icon. And then once he dies, it collects all the meteors. So it runs this function. There's additional meteors and there's regular meteors. So the additional ones are like when the meteors break apart, it drops in little ones, and then I wanted those to kind of keep coming back. So I made those come back, but then this like caps how many meteors. Well, it caps them up here, but that's what caps them. So that's like the wave controller or whatever. Use of on trigger enter. So on trigger enter for the shot controller. On trigger enter, if it enters any enemies, then it destroys them. It sends them to the game manager, and then it takes care of it from there. Object moves towards target's position, or on trigger exit. On trigger exit, I have it on the game manager. So the game manager has this collider right here, and then at the start of the level, this collider, there's a bound right here, bound padding, so I have it set to 2, and then what that does is that compensates for the screen, and then it adds the 2 extra to each side. So let's say I don't want any bounds, I'll just add 0, and then it just flush with the screen. So I have that little bound, and then once it leaves that trigger, then here it is on trigger exit 2D. If it's an enemy, then it just object pulls it. There's a function over here, I have an object pulling it. But if it's a player, it also object pulls it, so it loses a life, and then it runs this which I went over, which collects all the meteors, and then does that, and then it starts it up again. Alright, next thing. Trigger exit. Moves forward, target's position, fire and forget. So that's in the asteroids. Asteroid movement, here it is. So since it gets spawned in, there isn't really a start function. So what I have it is when it spawns in, it adds this, or when it gets respawned, so the object already exists because it's been object pulled. Then it just runs this function, and then this just sets the speed, and then the player position, and then it adds velocity towards that player position. And if not, it adds a player position, what asteroid level it is, the speed, and then it sets it that it's been activated. So next time it gets pulled, it doesn't get instantiated, it just gets enabled again. And then the example for that is, here I am, it's moving towards me. If I wait here, this will also move towards me. But if I move, the new one that spawns in, which was, it'll move towards me, and then I'll forget the position, so it'll just keep moving forward. The heat seeking, that was with Game Manager. Let me just make it so it's easier to see. So here we have the enemy. So he'll come towards me, and then if I move away, he'll kind of like be heat seeking, so he'll turn towards me. And then the code for that is right here, the enemy controller. So what it does, it always moves forward no matter where it's going, and then it just slowly turns towards the player position using the vector 3, that's slurp. So it slurps from its position to the new position, and then there's a rotation rate. I divided by 10 because if you added points, like the only way you can notice a difference was if you had like 0.01, and I was like, it's kind of weird. So like I divided by 10, so it could be like 0.1 or 0.5 or 0.7. So it'd be from 0 to 1. Would be 1 being it follows ultimately, and then 0 being it doesn't follow at all. Next thing, heat seeking, random.range. I use random.range a lot. So for the main one, it's spawning the meters and then which ones it spawns. So here it is. Where is it? Random.range. It selects a meter number and then it gets it from the list, spawns it in. Asteroid movement. When it gets destroyed, it drops 2 or 5 little ones. So there's a random.range also. The speed, it multiplies it from halving it to doubling the speed. So there's like a diversity in speeds when they're spawned in, so they don't all just feel generic. So I use random.range on a little bit. Random inside circle. So the only place where I used that was when it spawns around the thing. It spawns it in its unit circle, so that there's a little space for it, so they don't all just spawn in the same place. So there's like, it scatters a little bit, and then you can see it here. If I just so when I destroy it, it'll spawn in this little proximity circle. It won't just overlap, and then I'll choose a random direction. And I think I used for the random direction, not sure, I don't remember, destroy on collision. So I use that for the enemy ship as enemy controller. So if it collides with a player, then it'll run the loses life function, which is in the game manager. It's the only time I use that because the shot was a trigger, so I decided to keep everything kind of similar. So the shot controller, if it's an enemy, it just destroys it, and that's on trigger enter. Destroy after delay lifespan, that's also right here in the shot controller. There's a lifetime, and then if it surpasses that lifetime, then it dies or it gets destroyed. I didn't object pool on that. I could have, but I wasn't thinking that far ahead when I started this part of the code. Next, use of instantiate. So my game manager right here, if that object doesn't exist, so if it's just a reference, if it's referencing it from the resource folder, so how I have it now, so they don't actually exist anywhere in the scene. The meter holder's empty, so they're just referenced. If it's referenced in new, you can see it here, then it'll instantiate new ones. And the only way you can actually truly see that is once they leave the screen, they'll be back, and then it'll say clone, and then you can see it. So meteor clone, once they come back, matter of fact, I think I messed up the code a little bit. meter destroyed, which isn't true. So it should be meter out of bounds. So now if we see it, once he leaves, then he should be spawning back in there. Let's see it. So it gets instantiated in, and then it'll get added back in once it leaves bounds, and then it'll say it in its code if it's been activated before. If it has, then it'll pull it. If not, it'll instantiate it, and then that gets added right here. Has it been active or not? Or yeah. So bug free. It's been playing. My console is clear. Everything is perfect. Well, everything works. There's no bugs. Let's see. Comments. Project organization. And so we'll do comments and project organization right now. So everything is commented. Well, every chunk of code is commented. So it'll tell you what that chunk of code is doing. And then if you want a deeper look, then you can probably just read it yourself. It spawns in the wave, and then inside it tells you, determines if it's an enemy ship or a meteor. So then you can see it right here physically. So I'm not too specific over the comments. I'm just general what this chunk of code does to be easier to find, but not too specific that it takes up the whole page and adds a bunch of random lines. So make sure that the objects are within bounds. Everything's coded, or everything's commented. Even my variables are commented to keep them organized. Everything's organized, so the meter holder, all the meters that are spawned in gets added to the meter holder. Every shot that's spawned in gets added to the shot holder, which is right here, and it gets removed after a certain amount of time, which you can change in the game manager. Or actually, that's in the player manager. So there's a bullet lifespan, which is 3. Bring it down to 0 or whatever. So everything's pretty much organized. The resources that it gets pulled from is here, or instantiated from. Prefabs here, scenes, scripts, resources, prefabs. Even my image folders are all organized. Everything's commented. And let's see, game exceeds minimum requirements. So I added in, I don't think I saw in the requirements that it breaks apart. There's new little meteors to choose random direction. I added that in. I also added in the little fire around the player. That was pretty easy. I also added in some physics to make it like the player moves back a little every time he fires. You can also hold. There's a little flames. There's a losing and a winning screen. A revive. So when you run on lives, you can change how many lives. Everything pretty much updates itself the more you update it. From that, other than the meters break apart, it adds in new meters and the little aesthetics of it. That's pretty much most of it. It's pretty modular, so you can just add in as many meters as you want. It'll compensate for it. So let's say you just add 1, and then it'll, once you destroy them, then it just tells you when. That's pretty much it. It's pretty basic. But that's about it.